It's one of the world's most expensive zip codes.
The main thing about it is, I call it God's country.
Home to the affluent, including a former president. The beginnings of the town of Palm Beach in Palm Beach County.
Flagler was the man that was trying to make Palm Beach a tourist mecca.
Tonight, we take a look at the effort that brought thousands of black laborers to the area and the local community that blossomed in the process. The controversial historical debate.
For older West Palm Beach residents, it's probably one of the poorly kept secrets of being black in West Palm Beach.
The memories from those who lived a part of the history.
Oh, yes, Count Basie, yes, yes. You name them, I'll tell you the ones that I remember, yeah.
And the efforts today to pay homage to the past. This is CBS 12's The Styx of Palm Beach. Here's Denise Sawyer and Thomas Forrester.
Good evening and welcome. Palm Beach, home of upscale businesses, luxury homes, and a slice of local paradise. If you've ever driven down North County Road and Sunrise Avenue, well, you'll end up in the area near the Paramount Building and other businesses that thrive in our local community.
Now, Henry Flagler is perhaps best known for creating and growing the earliest chapters for the town of Palm Beach in Palm Beach County. He was an oil tycoon credited for the development of Florida's East Coast Railroad and creating the first infrastructure for Florida's tourism and agriculture industries. Now his home, White Hall, is where Henry Flagler Museum sits today.
And tonight we explore the first black pioneers in Palm Beach County who once made their home about a mile from where the museum stands today and who were ultimately involved in some of Flagler's earliest endeavors. Here's Erica Gavada.
At the turn of the 20th century, an employment boom in South Florida of unprecedented proportions.
These are the people that came to work for Henry Flagler to extend the railroad from Juneau down here so that the rich and famous could get to Palm Beach easier, and to build the Royal Ponciana Hotel and the Flagler Museum. Flagler was the man that was trying to make Palm Beach a tourist mecca.
Author and historian Avery Jimerson Clark says 1,000 laborers were hired to extend Henry Flagler's Florida East Coast Railroad and played a key role in the development of early Palm Beach, many whose descendants still live in the area today.
My grandmother brought my father and his siblings to Palm Beach to work for Henry Flagler.
But him being a railroad tycoon and being the man that he was, the sophisticated man he was, he saw the value in that island. My great-great-grandfather, who was the steamboat captain, his name was Jack Williams, for President Harding, was commissioned to bring Henry Flagler down here from up north.
And many of those laborers and their families settled on Palm Beach Island, between North County Road and Sunrise Avenue, an area of small tent-like homes that soon became known as the Styx.
And if you understand Greek mythology, the river Styx is the boundary between earth and the underworld. And so that type of play on words in the name kind of indicates what people thought of that community, that it was hell in certain respects, but to the residents it was home.
Palm Beach was so involved with the black community. If you worked for them, and at length of time, most likely you were in the wheel in the early days.
It was a growing community at a time until conditions deteriorated.
From everything I've read, there was no running water, no electricity. These were shacks that were put up by the artisans that worked on the island, and they were very close quarters.
The details of what happened next remain a source of great debate till this day, but many believe Henry Flagler may have played a role. Former West Palm Beach Commissioner Robbie Littles heard the story this way.
Along came this fellow named Henry Flagler, who decided that he needed that land to build on, to develop. He threw a party for the blacks on the island. They all went over to the party, and while they were celebrating and enjoying themselves, their homes on the island of Palm Beach, in the town of Palm Beach, burned down mysteriously.
Local business owner Derek McCrae's family version of the tale is much the same.
From what I heard, that he got with the residents and set up a party on the West Palm Beach side and had everybody ferried over to this big party. And then they had a mob of people to burn up the people's homes and shanties and tents over on in the Styx and forced them out of there. And then they took the land over.
The Palm Beach Historical Society's version is very different. Published text says only that by 1912, the tenants of the Styx had been evicted. No mention of a fire or any record of the large-scale homelessness that would have followed such a devastating blaze. Avery Clark believes this version is the most accurate. And the Styx was actually legislated out of existence.
They claimed there was a fire, and Flagler had the people come over here to a circus and all of that, but that's not true.
Still, more than a century later, the urban legend remains strong, and the pulse of public opinion split.
There are so many historical facts that make some sort of scurrilous removal of the residents believable, that it's become a lore for the most part in the black community. And because here in Palm Beach County, we do a very horrible job of retaining the history of African Americans and our accomplishments and contributions to this community. The Historical Society has a yeoman's task to convince us that the version that the African American community has of what happened is different. There is probably somewhere in between the Palm Beach County Historical Society's version of events and the African Americans' lore of events. It's somewhere in between, so you can take it how you find it.
Now, according to texts from Palm Beach Historical Society, there were several landlords who owned land in the Styx, including Henry Maddock, James Munyon, and E.M. Burrelsford. Now, we reached out to the Flagler Museum for an interview on this project. Officials there denied our request. Well, founded in 1893, the historic Tabernacle Missionary Baptist Church was also originally located in the Styx on Palm Beach. It moved about a year later to West Palm Beach on modern-day Clematis Street. The church also has helped establish the first school for African-American students in Palm Beach County. In 1925, the church moved to its current location along 8th Street. It was placed on the National Register of Historic Places in 1992.
Now, while the demise of the Styx marked the official end for the black tenants on Palm Beach Island at that time, there were blossoming, thriving communities across the bridge in West Palm Beach in the northwest and northeast sections. One was a community where many workers employed at area hotels and other surrounding businesses lived, and it flourished for decades. Here again is Erica Guevara.
Pleasant City was incorporated in 1912. Its border extended from 23rd Street to the north, 17th to the south, Dixie Highway to the east, and its western border, the Florida East Coast Railroad.
When they came over from Pleasant City to Pleasant City, we had a beautiful community. A lot of the people, well, one thing, we were the ones that had the money because they worked in the hotels.
In her book, Pleasant City, West Palm Beach, Avery Jimerson Clark details the experience of those earliest residents, including her own family. These neighbors, by all accounts, owned, not rented, buying lots for $150 and up. Many of the streets in Pleasant City don names like Cheerful, Happiness, Merry, and Contentment, named by real estate developer and former West Palm Beach Mayor George Curry.
But what is peculiar is that George Curry, which our Curry Park, was the treasurer for Dade County, and he was ordered to send the sheriff in to remove all those who refused to willingly leave the community. And then, ironically enough, he being a real estate agent and real estate owner, owned the land, which is now Pleasant City, and sold the properties to the folks who left the Styx in Pleasant City. And so that's kind of peculiar that on the one hand, he has a hand in removing the residents, and then on the other hand, he is the person that they have to buy their property from.
But in Pleasant City, we were united.
And many, according to Clark, came from educated backgrounds.
These people that came to work for Flagler were not just common laborers. They came with big companies, some of them. Some of the blacks were engineers and whatnot. They built nice homes. They had businesses. We had 5 medical doctors in one family.
Residents like Dr. J. Russell Diet Sr., a leading doctor in the local community, or freed slave Millie Gildersleeve, who worked as a nurse and midwife delivering black and white babies in Palm Beach County. She was best friends with Clark's mother. Hazel Augustus was the county's first black architect and designed Pleasant City Elementary School, Payne Chapel AME Church, and other surrounding homes. Even with strict segregation laws at the time, the community here thrived for several decades, as did a lot of the surrounding area.
We had our own drugstores, grocery stores, laundromats, cleaners, pharmacies, everything. Understanding that legally we could not move outside of those boundaries. It was our economy inside the larger economy.
Former Commissioner Robbie Littles lived outside Pleasant City in the nearby Northwest section and says even crime was policed differently back then in West Palm Beach.
Eventually we had black policemen who were on the force, who enforced the law inside of those boundaries. In fact, they could not arrest white people in the city. They had to call a white officer.
Little says while desegregation was a good thing for the black community overall, he believes it also hurt Pleasant City, as well as some of the local African-American neighborhoods.
Then along came so-called desegregation, so-called integration, somewhere around the 64, 65. That's when they started the school integration here, and to a great degree, it's been downhill and questionable for black folks, for black students, ever since then.
Following those years, many of the wealthier residents of Pleasant City moved on, with little evidence of the once thriving community that once stood here, something that is disappointing to Avery Clark, who knew it personally back then as a young girl.
Pleasant City, I want the historic designation, and we won't get that. That's political.
Now, we asked the city of West Palm Beach about the historic designation for Pleasant City, and a spokeswoman said the city has not received a formal application requesting historic designation for Pleasant City. Any and all requests for historic designation will receive thoughtful consideration by the city's Historic Preservation Planner and Historic Preservation Board. Dr. Thomas Leroy Jefferson had also set up residence in the Styx and became the first African-American physician in West Palm Beach. Now, his practice was on North Olive Avenue, according to the Palm Beach Historical Society. And the T. Leroy Jefferson Medical Society says Dr. Jefferson was related to President Thomas Jefferson through slave Sally Hemings. Dr. Jefferson was reportedly known as the bicycle doctor because he made house calls on his bike throughout the area.
Now, one of the thriving businesses in the historic part of the city had been a hub for black entertainment during the Jim Crow era. Blacks couldn't perform at white clubs, so they had their own. Places like the Cotton Club, and here in West Palm Beach, the place to be was the Sunset Cocktail Lounge. Gary Detman takes us inside a stop along the so-called Chitlin Circuit.
There are a lot of great musicians that came through that building right there.
Longtime friends and musicians John Reese, Carl Vickers, and B.T. Littles take a walk down memory lane, or in this case, 8th and Rosemary. It's not far from the curb that served as their front row seat to the Sunset Cocktail Lounge as kids.
I remember James Brown little bus parked right across on the side of the Sunset on the west side of the street. A lot of people, a lot of main entertainers were in that building. I used to come over because I grew up in this neighborhood, and we lived right across the street, and all of the entertainers who come used to run over and stand on the side to hear them play or see them walk in the building.
Incredible memories. When I was too young to go in, me and my buddies, we just stand outside, man, and listen to those great bands like B.B. King's band or Bobby Blue Bland, and we'd stand there all night and listen, you know, because it was just fill the neighborhood, you know, and it's quite a venue.
The lounge opened in 1926 in West Palm Beach atop an auto repair shop.
A lot of people don't know when the Sunset was built, it didn't have a roof. Folk used to sit up in the auditorium and watch the sunset. And while they drank and danced and had fun, listened to music. But that's how it got its name, Sunset.
Duke Ellington, Lena Horne, Count Basie, James Brown, Ella Fitzgerald. The Sunset drew big names to this corner of West Palm Beach.
The Sunset was one of the most prolific, exciting places to be in Palm Beach County for black folks. It's where all the majors came through because they didn't have any other venues during that time. You had the Count Basies, the Cab Callaways, the James Browns, and those people back that was performing during that time, and the list goes on of people that's came through here, and that's where we had to go in order for us to get quality entertainment. And that was called the Chitlin Circuit during that time, where you had entertainers, the best entertainers going around, but it was so segregated that the Sunset was the place that people went.
Who's your favorite?
I like Jackie Wolf because he was an entertainer. Showed me how to move on.
He had the music and the crowd.
And the crowd, and he could move. He was a microphone handling genius. He made the microphone look like it was almost alive.
These friends would soon get their turn.
I was actually in school at Howard and started working at the Howard Theater, playing in the house band there. And Sam and Dave came through town and they said, we need a trumpet player, and would you like to go on the road? I said, well, I don't know. They said, well, so where are you going? I said, our first job is at the Sunset in West Palm Beach. And I'm going, are you kidding me? I'm in, because I was from here. So I figured it was a free trip home for Christmas. And of course, the rest is history. I didn't go back to school for 20, 30 years. So I went on the road with Sam and Dave. We came and we played the Sunset. But before then, during the summer, we would have jam sessions there. And that was my first kind of sticking my toe in the water, you know, trying to play with other musicians in an improv kind of a setting. And there was a trumpet player from here that played with B.B. King. And he invited us all up to do a big jam session. And Ben tells this story great. In fact, he always reminds me of it. When I sat in with him, his name was Kenneth Sands, and he said, okay, kid, what do you want to play? I said, I want to play All Blues by Miles Davis. He says, okay, great. So we started playing the song. Kenny took his solo, and then he looked at me to play when it was my turn. And I just stood and looked at him. And he said, aren't you going to play? I said, play what? You just played everything. I don't know what to play. But I was green, you know, and it was my first time doing stuff like that.
All these groups we played over in that building over there, you know, and it was just something when you came to the Sunset, saw all those people sitting out there, and you were up on that stage looking back at them.
Who's your guy that really stands out to you today?
Him, BT. He was one of the unbelievable players. I remember when I was married, and I was in college. I just got kicked out of college. He called me and said, I have a ticket for you at the airport. You need to come to New York in the next day. My wife was pregnant. I told her I got to go. The next day, I went to the airport. I caught the airplane out and ended up in New York.
You played where?
Apollo. I toured the whole country with Sam and Dave. Then I played with George McCrae. You know, so I played with a lot of people, and it was directly through him. So I'm just thankful to be here.
Here, back on the road again, but this time in front of the Sunset, where it all began. Anxious for the new beginnings it'll provide for those coming up behind them.
I'm impressed. It kind of likens me to the Howard Theater in Washington, D.C., which is a very old venue, and it had a small footprint, and I got invited there, man, and it was like this. It was magnificent, you know, 3 stories of glass and chrome and mahogany, just, you know, done completely over, and the gospel choir of Harlem would do brunches every Sunday there. Big acts are coming through there. But this kind of reminds me of that. It's a renaissance, I would say, of a sort. And hopefully it will revitalize the area, get some great acts in and be a great venue for musicians in West Palm Beach.
Now, for one woman, the venue is even more special than the music. It's also the beginning of her amazing love story that spanned 42 years of marriage, and it all began at that bar. Here again is Gary Detman with the story of a Florida orange and a Georgia peach.
A limousine ride back in time for Janie Lowe on her 94th birthday. A visit to the Sunset Lounge where she made music of her own after World War II.
I was the bartender at Sunset in 1945.
The Sunset Lounge, the place to be back in the day for black entertainers.
I love the Sunset, meeting different people and, you know, fixing their drinks and talking with them. I really enjoyed it. But you know, like I say, I was downstairs, but I could still hear the music and the performance and stuff kind of going on up there. But, some of them, they would come down and sit at the bar and talk to me or have a little drink, you know, at their little recreation time. So it was really nice. I really enjoyed it.
Until one day, he walked in. Army Sergeant Buster Robert Lowe.
He came to the Sunset to get a drink, and he saw me, and so when he came in, I said, what are you drinking today? So he said, "Oh, Granddad 100. I said, what? So I said, not "Oh, Granddad 86, no, 100%. So I fixed him a drink, and he and I started talking, and he asked me where I was from, and I said from Georgia. He said, "Oh, a Georgia peach." So I said, he said, "Well, you're gonna be my wife." I said, "Oh, man." So he really knocked me off, so we just started talking from there.
What was the spark about him?
I don't know, I just seemed like to me, he just touched me or something whenever I met him, especially when he said a Georgia peach.
Marriage followed, and so did 3 children. They had their ups and downs.
A lot of stuff he didn't want me to cook, like fatback, you know. He didn't want me to cook fatback in the house because he said he was back in the Hoover's time, and that's what all they ate, that kind of stuff. So I said, well, I like my fatback to cook black-eyed peas and stuff. So I let him go along with that for 10 years. And after one day he came in the house, he said, "I smell some fatback cooking." I said, "Yeah." I said, I want me some black-eyed peas and some fatback. So he said, "Okay, honey, go ahead and do what you want to do."
Janie says her husband worked as a mechanic and helped out where he could.
And you know, my husband, he was, in one sense, he was a genius, but he was a welder and a mechanic. And he didn't never get really paid for what. If I had the money now that he worked on people's cars and they'd paid him, I'd be rich now. And then, you know, people would get drowned in the lake or the canals. They would call my husband to dive down to get them. But, you know, they would just like give him $25 or $20 or $50. That's all.
To dive down in the murky
To
lake?
dive down in there, get those people.
He also loved fishing, most of the time.
And another thing about my husband, when we would go fishing, and if I would catch more than him, okay, I'm ready to go home now. If I just catch one more than he did, he said, okay, I'm ready to go home. He didn't want me to outdo him with nothing.
One story she'll never forget.
The gambling people, what his name? Cracker Johnson, that's it. You know, they lost the key or something to their safe, and they couldn't get in there. And somebody said, well, Buster Lowe, he know how to weld, and he's a mechanic. Go find Buster Lowe. They came and got my husband, and he broke that safe loose. You know how much they gave him? Just $50.
And what was in the safe?
And like my husband said, money. Money. Falling out. When he opened the door, money is falling out.
Janie secretly taught herself how to drive and never had to do it until that fateful day when he wanted to drive into West Palm Beach from Belglade to get fried chicken.
And he came, he said, Mama, you ain't through doing what you want. I'm ready to go to West Palm Beach. So I said, okay, give me time. So finally, I said, okay, I'm ready. So we got in the car, and you know, he didn't want me to get my driving license. When he knew anything I had done, gone and got my driving license, and I told him, I said, I done went and got my driving license. Can I drive the car now? What? Let me see. So he looked, I showed him my driving license. He said, oh my goodness. So finally, we got about halfway. And he said, Mama, say, I feel faint. So you better get over and drive. I said, you gonna tell me to drive? And the way you talk about you don't want me to get no driving license? So I slid over on the driver's side and started driving, and he didn't say nothing. So I kind of did it. I said, Dad, I said, you're not saying how I'm driving? And he didn't say nothing. So I looked over there at him like that, and he wasn't saying nothing. So I said, something must be wrong with him. So I just went right on to the hospital with him. And they said that he instantly died.
On this day, the drive back to the Sunset is with family.
And he used to love to take me to the bars and different people to see me.
Memories of the love story still fresh, with a tiny secret.
Louis Armstrong, he asked me to marry him, but I didn't like him or something, you know. I thought, oh no, I'm not ready for that yet. But that was before my husband came into the picture.
Did you tell him about Louis Armstrong?
No, I bitten up. No way. But I think Jew Baby or somebody did tell him about it though. And then, why you didn't tell me about it? I said, well, you so controlling, I'm scared to tell you anything. So, but he said, that's all right, I'm the winner.
Well, the Sunset Lounge will be a major focal point of the historic city rebirth.
Now, Gary Detman looks at the revival of art and culture entertainment in that area, some once called the Little Harlem of West Palm Beach.
Beneath the glow of progress in West Palm Beach, there's a pathway to the past.
This is the Styx Promenade.
Construction crews are busy. The noise hints to a future built on history.
Styx has very important historical ties to the city of West Palm Beach. And this project was an effort to pay homage to those humble African community origins that started in Palm Beach and are very important to the city of West Palm Beach.
Call it a revival to a sleepy area abuzz decades ago with Black-owned businesses. Businesses like Harvey's Barbecue, now known today as McCrae's Backyard Barbecue. And the bicycle doctor, T. Leroy Jefferson, the city's first Black physician.
That was an interesting area. That was a great time for West Palm Beach and African Americans in West Palm Beach. It was very thriving. A lot of industries were coming here. There were a lot of jobs that people were doing. So it was really a great time. And it was a good time to have a Black physician in Palm Beach County.
But the buzz faded.
Then when, integration took place, then you've seen these businesses fall off, because then Black folks figured they didn't have to patronize themselves, and they went to other businesses. And that's when we started seeing our businesses fall off, because the malls started picking up.
Today, that buzz is coming back.
So this project started a few years ago, probably right around 2017, but it's been in the planning stages for a little bit. So we're just now, as you can see, the infrastructure is in place.
An infrastructure for Black businesses.
It shows that we're being very intentional about acknowledging and embracing and harnessing the history of our African American community. And then also what the city is doing to really create more opportunities with equity.
A community of opportunity with input from the community.
The folks from the community at large actually named the park Heart and Soul Park, and have been very involved in a lot of the interior designs for the Sunset Lounge. So we're doing our best to really make sure that the community is with us every step of the way.
The centerpiece will be Heart and Soul Park.
So Heart and Soul Park is going to be a great public open space, has a music theme to it, but it'll be just a great place for the community to gather, and great public open spaces that I think everybody deserves. And we're very excited about it, because I think it'll be a great entrance being right in front of the Sunset Lounge.
The historic Sunset Lounge, a doorway to the glory days.
That was a social gathering for Blacks when I grew up. Before I grew up, that's when Ella Fitzgerald, Duke Ellington, and all those people would come. Before the Cotton Club and before the other thing was even born, that was the Sunset, the class of Black people.
Oh, yes, Count Basie, yes, yes. You name them, I'll tell you the ones that I remember, yeah. Oh, yeah, Billy Stein, yes, yes. All of them came, They would have the performance like Friday, Saturdays.
So this was the place to be in West Palm Beach.
Oh, yes, for the entertainment, yes. Mm-hmm.
Once renovated, the Sunset will act as a bookend to the new community, with the Queen of Sheba restaurant as the other. The area will include a job center down Rosemary Avenue.
One of the other big initiatives is education and training, and the city is currently working to build a West Palm Beach Center for Arts and Technology that is currently being worked on. And that will provide essentially a career ladder for folks nearby in this community.
And a $23 million infrastructure improvement just blocks away.
Tamarind Avenue, once it is completed, will essentially be that corridor into the historic Northwest and also into downtown. That will have businesses, walkability, a lot of just a great inviting street where folks can feel safe and comfortable and really be that sort of spine and connection for the historic Northwest.
Now, developers are now making room along the Styx Promenade for about 10 businesses. A $1.9 million project is slated to open later this summer. We'll continue to follow the progress of the Styx Promenade and bring you updates on air and online.
And thank you for joining us for the CBS 12 digital special, The Styx of Palm Beach. You can read more about all of these stories and find bonus content at CBS12.com and on the free CBS 12 News app. I'm Denise Sawyer.
And I'm Thomas Forster. Good night.